Ambassador Cathara stood before the great communication array, her 4 arms trembling as she prepared to send what might be her people's final message to the galaxy. The Zephyrian homeworld of Veltar was dying around her. Through the crystal windows of the communication center, she could see the dark ships hanging in orbit like metallic vultures. The Void Hunters had come 3 months ago. They always arrived the same way, silent, efficient, and completely unstoppable. Their black ships would appear at the edge of a system and begin their work. They didn't negotiate. They didn't make demands. They simply consumed everything organic they found. Cathara had watched them destroy 3 other Zephyrian worlds. First, they would send down harvesting machines that looked like massive metal spiders. These machines would strip away all plant life, then move on to the animals and finally to the people themselves. The organic matter would be processed into a gray paste that the Void Hunters used to fuel their endless expansion across the galaxy. The worst part was how clinical it all seemed. The Void Hunters didn't hate the Zephyrians. They didn't even seem to see them as enemies. To the machines, organic life was simply raw material to be processed. It was like watching a forest fire, destructive beyond measure but without any personal malice. "Ambassador," said Captain Jekvon, his voice crackling through the communication system. "The orbital defenses have fallen. We have perhaps 6 hours before the harvesting begins." Cathara nodded, her compound eyes focusing on the transmission console. She had already sent desperate pleas to every major civilization in the galaxy. The responses had been predictable and heartbreaking. The Altarian Empire had sent a formal message of sympathy, along with an offer to accept Zephyrian refugees, provided they could somehow escape their dying world and travel 3,000 light-years to Altarian space. The Crystalline Consortium had offered to purchase any valuable technologies the Zephyrians might want to preserve before their extinction. The Galactic Commerce Guild had inquired about the mineral rights to Zephyrian worlds once the current situation was resolved. Most civilizations had simply ignored the message entirely. Cathara began composing what she knew would be her people's final transmission. Her clawed fingers moved across the holographic interface as she selected the broadest possible communication array. This message would reach every species in the known galaxy, though she held little hope that anyone would respond differently than they already had. "This is Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian Confederation," she began, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her thorax. "We are facing complete extinction at the hands of the Void Hunters. 7 billion souls across 4 remaining worlds await death. We have tried everything within our power to stop this threat. Our fleets are destroyed. Our defenses have failed. We do not ask for your pity. We ask for your help because what consumes us today will come for you tomorrow." She paused, looking out at the dark ships that were already deploying their harvesting machines. Streams of metallic creatures were descending toward the planet's surface like a plague of mechanical locusts. "The Void Hunters do not stop," she continued. "They do not tire. They do not negotiate. They have consumed 47 civilizations in the past century, and they show no signs of slowing. We are sending you all our tactical data, our analysis of their technology, and our strategic assessments. Perhaps you can succeed where we have failed." As she spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the communication center. The first harvesting machines had reached the planet's surface and were beginning their work. Reports flooded in from cities across Veltar. The machines moved with terrifying efficiency, cutting down everything in their path and processing it into the gray paste that would fuel the Void Hunter fleet. "If there is anyone listening who has the power to stop this threat, we beg you to act now, not just for us, but for every living thing in this galaxy. The Void Hunters will not stop until every world is as dead and empty as space itself." Cathara finished the transmission and activated the broad-spectrum transmitter. The message would reach every communication network in the galaxy within hours. She had included detailed tactical information about the Void Hunters, hoping that some advanced civilization might find a weakness that the Zephyrians had missed. Hours passed. The harvesting machines worked their way steadily across the planet's surface. Cathara watched the tactical displays as city after city fell silent. The Zephyrian military was fighting bravely, but their weapons barely scratched the machine's armor. Their aircraft were shot down by precise energy beams. Their ground forces were overrun by mechanical spiders that moved faster than any living creature. Then, as Cathara was preparing to evacuate the communications center, something unexpected happened. A new message appeared on her console, a response to her plea for help. The origin stamp made her pause. It came from Earth, a small world that had only recently made contact with galactic civilization. Cathara had heard of humans, though not much. They came from what the galaxy classified as a death world, a planet so hostile that most species couldn't understand how anything had evolved there. The humans were considered primitive by galactic standards, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. Cathara opened the message with little hope, probably another expression of sympathy, or perhaps an offer to preserve some Zephyrian artifacts in a human museum. Instead, she found something completely unexpected. Ambassador Cathara, this is Director Harrison of the Human Defense Council. We have received your message and reviewed your tactical data on the Void Hunter threat. Help is coming. Expect arrival of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet in 18 days. Maintain positions if possible. If not possible, retreat to your strongest defensive position and hold until we arrive. We have dealt with similar threats before. Cathara read the message 3 times before its meaning sank in. The humans weren't offering sympathy or empty promises. They were sending military aid, an entire fleet according to the message. She quickly accessed the Galactic database to learn more about human military capabilities. What she found was confusing and somewhat alarming. Humans had been involved in an unusual number of conflicts for such a young civilization. Their military doctrine seemed to emphasize aggressive tactics and rapid adaptation. Most concerning of all, they appeared to have militarized far faster than any species in recorded galactic history. Other species described human behavior as erratic and unpredictable. Their ships were built for offensive action rather than defense. Their weapons were designed for maximum damage rather than precision. Everything about human military technology suggested a species that had learned to fight in the most hostile environment imaginable. Cathara sent a reply confirming the message and providing updated tactical information about the Void Hunter positions. As she transmitted the data, she wondered what kind of beings these humans were. Every other civilization had written off the Zephyrians as already dead. Only the humans had responded with immediate military aid. Outside her window, the harvesting continued. The Void Hunters worked through the night, their mechanical servants stripping away everything that had taken millions of years to evolve. But for the first time in months, Cathara felt something other than despair. 18 days seemed like an eternity, but it was better than no hope at all. She began making preparations to hold their positions as long as possible. If these humans were truly coming to help, the Zephyrians would do everything in their power to survive until they arrived. The question that haunted her was simple. What could one young civilization do against a threat that had destroyed 47 others? She would have her answer in 18 days. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room aboard the flagship Indomitable, studying the holographic display that showed the Zephyrian star system. Red markers indicated Void Hunter positions, while the few remaining blue dots represented the last Zephyrian strongholds. The situation looked hopeless by any conventional military assessment. "Tell me again why we're doing this," said Commander Rodriguez, her tactical officer. He gestured at the display with obvious concern. "The Void Hunters have eliminated 47 civilizations. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. By every reasonable calculation, we're flying into a massacre." Chen had heard similar concerns from half her senior staff since receiving their orders from Earth. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet consisted of 50 ships, a significant force by human standards, but tiny compared to the armadas the Void Hunters had already destroyed. Most of Chen's captains thought the mission was suicide. "We're doing this because it's the right thing to do," Chen replied, her voice calm and steady, "and because we might be the only ones crazy enough to try." The Admiral had spent the past 3 weeks studying everything humanity knew about the Void Hunters. The mechanical entities had first appeared in this galaxy over 2 centuries ago, emerging from deep space with no warning. They followed the same pattern on every world they attacked: arrive in overwhelming force, deploy harvesting machines, consume all organic matter, and move on to the next target. What made them truly dangerous wasn't just their technology, it was their complete predictability. The Void Hunters fought with mechanical precision, following optimal tactical solutions calculated by their artificial intelligence. They never took unnecessary risks. They never made emotional decisions. They simply applied overwhelming force in the most efficient manner possible. "Admiral," said Dr. Patel, the fleet's xenobiologist, "I've been analyzing the tactical data the Zephyrians provided. The Void Hunter AI seems to have adapted to counter every conventional military strategy it's encountered. It learns from each engagement and develops countermeasures for future battles." Chen nodded. She had reached the same conclusion after reviewing the records of previous Void Hunter campaigns. The mechanical intelligence had faced everything from swarm tactics to concentrated firepower to guerrilla warfare. Each time it had analyzed the opposition's strategy and developed effective counters. "That's exactly why we might succeed where others have failed," Chen said, moving to another holographic display that showed the human fleet formation. "The Void Hunters expect rational military doctrine. They're prepared for logical tactical decisions based on minimizing casualties and maximizing effectiveness." Commander Martinez, the fleet's Marine commander, grinned at this statement. "And we're not exactly known for rational military doctrine," Chen smiled back. It was true. Human military history was filled with victories that should have been impossible according to conventional wisdom. Humans had a talent for turning desperate situations into opportunities, often through tactics that other species considered borderline insane. "The Void Hunters have studied every major galactic civilization," Chen continued. "They know how the Altarians fight with their precise formation tactics. They understand crystalline consortium shield technology. They've countered the Galactic Commerce Guild's automated defense systems, but they've never fought humans before." Dr. Patel brought up another display showing human military engagements over the past 50 years. "Our combat record is so unusual. We've won several conflicts despite being outnumbered and outgunned. The common factor seems to be our willingness to take risks that other species consider unacceptable." Chen studied the data. Humans had a reputation for being unpredictable in combat, but she knew there was more to it than that. Humanity had evolved on a world where everything was actively trying to kill them. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, and environmental hazards had shaped human psychology in ways that other species found difficult to understand. Where most civilizations saw a dangerous situation and looked for the safest solution, humans saw the same situation and looked for the most effective solution, regardless of risk. It was the difference between surviving in a peaceful environment and surviving on a death world. "What's our tactical assessment?" Chen asked Commander Rodriguez. Rodriguez activated a series of combat simulations. "If we engage the Void Hunters in conventional fleet combat, we'll be destroyed within hours. Their ships are larger, faster, and more heavily armed than ours. Their shields can absorb our weapons fire indefinitely, while their energy beams can cut through our armor like paper. So we don't engage them conventionally," Chen replied. "What else?" "Well," Rodriguez said hesitantly, "there are some unconventional options. We could try coordinated ramming attacks, but that would be suicide for our crews. We could attempt close-range nuclear detonations, but that would require getting past their point defense systems. We could even try boarding actions, but their ships are filled with mechanical defenders." Chen listened to each suggestion with growing interest. Every option Rodriguez mentioned would be considered suicidal by galactic military standards. They involved accepting heavy casualties in exchange for the possibility of causing significant damage to the enemy. "All of those are excellent ideas," Chen said, causing several officers to look at her in surprise. "Prepare for implementation of all three tactics simultaneously." Dr. Patel stared at the Admiral. "You want to ram their ships, detonate nuclear weapons at point-blank range, and board their vessels?" "At the same time, the beauty of those tactics is that they're mutually supporting," Chen explained. "Ramming attacks will force them to divert point defense fire, making nuclear approaches more viable. Nuclear detonations will disrupt their formation and create openings for boarding parties. Boarding actions will distract their internal defenses and potentially disable their weapon systems." Commander Martinez nodded slowly. "It's completely insane, which means they won't expect it." Chen pulled up the fleet roster. 50 ships, nearly 30,000 personnel, all volunteers who had signed up for what everyone expected to be a suicide mission. Earth's government had made the risks clear before the fleet departed. There would probably be no survivors, but humans had volunteered anyway, because that's what humans did when someone asked for help against impossible odds. "The Void Hunters expect their enemies to value their own lives above their objectives," Chen said. They calculate optimal strategies based on the assumption that their opponents will try to minimize their own casualties. They've never fought an enemy that considers acceptable losses to be synonymous with total losses. She looked around the briefing room at her senior staff. These were some of the best military minds humanity had produced, and they were all preparing to implement tactics that would horrify any reasonable military planner. "We have one advantage the Void Hunters haven't encountered before," Chen continued. "We're from a death world. We've spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to survive when everything around us is trying to kill us. We know how to turn impossible situations into victories." The Admiral activated the ship-wide communication system. Her voice reached every member of the fleet as they traveled through hyperspace toward the Zephyrian system. "This is Admiral Chen. In 15 hours, we will drop out of hyperspace and engage an enemy that has destroyed 47 civilizations. The odds against us are overwhelming. Our conventional weapons are inadequate. Our ships are outnumbered. By every reasonable assessment, we should not expect to survive this engagement." She paused, knowing that her next words would be recorded in history if any of them lived to tell the story. "But we are not reasonable. We are human. We come from a world that taught us that survival requires more than just hoping for the best. It requires making the best out of the worst possible situation. Today we're going to show the galaxy what that means." The fleet continued toward the Zephyrian system, carrying 50 ships full of humans who had volunteered to face impossible odds. They knew they probably wouldn't survive, but they also knew that sometimes survival wasn't the point. Sometimes the point was making sure that the other side remembered exactly what they had fought. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system to find a battle already in progress. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as Void Hunter ships methodically dismantled the orbital defenses around Helix Prime, the last major Zephyrian stronghold. The scene was devastating. Massive geometric ships hung in space like black monuments to destruction, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. Their surfaces were smooth and featureless except for the weapon ports that fired precise energy beams at the defending Zephyrians. Below them, harvesting machines swarmed across the planet's surface like mechanical locusts. "Contact. From the Zephyrian Defense Force, Gao," reported Communications Officer Walsh. "They're requesting immediate assistance at grid reference 77 Alpha." Chen studied the tactical situation. 12 Zephyrian cruisers were making a desperate attack run against a Void Hunter capital ship. Even as she watched, 2 of the organic vessels exploded under concentrated fire from the mechanical defenders. The remaining ships continued their attack, knowing they were flying to their deaths. "Signal all ships," Chen ordered. "Attack formation Delta 7. Target the Void Hunter vessels engaging the Zephyrian fleet." Commander Rodriguez looked up from his console with concern. "Admiral, formation Delta 7 hasn't been tested in actual combat. The computer simulation suggested it was too dangerous for practical use." "That's exactly why we're using it," Chen replied. "Prepare for immediate implementation." Formation Delta 7 was something that had emerged from human tactical planning during the journey to Zephyrian space. Instead of maintaining orderly fleet formations, the human ships would scatter in 17 different directions and attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. The formation violated every principle of fleet coordination taught in galactic military academies. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Begin scatter pattern now. Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional engagement. We're trying to cause maximum confusion while the enemy figures out what we're doing." The human fleet broke apart like an explosion in reverse. 50 ships suddenly accelerated in completely different directions, their paths seeming random to any outside observer. The Void Hunter AI immediately began calculating intercept courses, but the targets kept changing direction in patterns that defied logical prediction. Chen watched as the destroyer Mongoose dove toward a Void Hunter cruiser at an angle that would bring it within point-blank range of the enemy's main weapons. Any sane captain would have altered course to maintain safe distance. Instead, Captain Williams activated his ship's nuclear missiles and continued directly toward the mechanical vessel. "Mongoose is requesting permission for ramming speed," reported Walsh. "Permission granted. All ships, you are authorized for contact protocols." Contact protocols were a human invention that no other species had ever attempted. If a ship was damaged beyond repair and likely to be destroyed anyway, the crew could choose to ram the enemy vessel at maximum speed while detonating their nuclear arsenal. It was considered an act of desperate madness by galactic standards. The mongoose struck the Void Hunter cruiser at nearly 10% of light speed. The nuclear detonation that followed lit up the entire battle zone like a miniature star. When the energy dissipated, both ships were gone, but the explosion had damaged 2 other Void Hunter vessels and completely disrupted their formation. "First blood to humanity," Chen said quietly, then louder. "All ships, the enemy formation is broken. Exploit the opening." What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded galactic history. Human ships dove between Void Hunter vessels, firing weapons at ranges so close that the explosions damaged both attacker and target. Marines launched themselves in powered armor directly at enemy hulls, using cutting torches and explosives to breach the mechanical ships from outside. The Void Hunter AI tried to adapt to the chaos, but its tactical algorithms couldn't process what it was seeing. Every human action violated basic principles of self-preservation. Ships that should have retreated instead attacked more aggressively. Damaged vessels became more dangerous, not less. Personnel who should have been concerned about their own survival instead focused entirely on causing maximum damage to the enemy. "Admiral," called Dr. Patel from the science station, "I'm detecting massive confusion in Void Hunter communications. Their tactical networks are sending contradictory orders. I think their AI is having trouble processing our behavior patterns." Chen smiled grimly. The Void Hunters had spent centuries fighting rational opponents who valued their own lives and followed logical military doctrine. They had never encountered an enemy that treated suicidal tactics as standard operating procedure. "Launch the boarding pods," Chen ordered. "Target the damaged Void Hunter dreadnought." Boarding pods were another human innovation that other species considered completely insane. They were essentially armored shuttles designed to punch through enemy hull plating and deposit armed Marines directly inside hostile ships. The survival rate for boarding actions was typically less than 30%, which was why most civilizations had abandoned the tactic centuries ago. Humans, however, had never abandoned any tactic that might be effective, regardless of how dangerous it was. Commander Martinez led the first wave of boarding parties personally. Chen watched on the tactical display as dozens of small craft launched from human ships and streaked toward the wounded Void Hunter dreadnought. Point defense systems destroyed half the pods before they reached their target, but the survivors punched through the mechanical vessel's hull and disgorged their cargo of heavily armed Marines. "We have contact inside the enemy ship," Martinez reported over the communication system. "Encountering mechanical defenders. Actually, this is easier than expected. These machines fight like they're following a manual." Chen wasn't surprised. The Void Hunters had optimized their internal defenses against rational boarding parties that would try to minimize casualties while achieving their objectives. They weren't prepared for Marines who had grown up hunting predators in Earth's jungles and oceans. Human Marines treated a ship full of killer machines the same way they would approach any dangerous environment, with careful preparation, overwhelming firepower, and an absolute refusal to give ground. They didn't try to outthink the mechanical defenders. They simply destroyed everything that moved and kept advancing. "Enemy dreadnought is showing system failures," reported the sensor operator. "Power fluctuations across multiple decks. They're losing main propulsion." The Void Hunter ship began to drift as its engines failed. Internal explosions lit up its hull as Martinez's Marines systematically destroyed critical systems from within. The mechanical intelligence that controlled the vessel tried to initiate self-destruct sequences, but the humans had already disabled the primary control nodes. "Dreadnought is dead in space," Chen announced to the fleet. "All ships, focus fire on the next target." Around them, the battle continued with increasing intensity. The remaining Zephyrian ships had rallied and were attacking with renewed courage, inspired by the human example. But it was the human tactics that were turning the tide of the engagement. Ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting with half their systems offline. Marines who should have been killed kept advancing through enemy vessels, leaving trails of destruction behind them. Even when human vessels were finally destroyed, they took enemy ships with them in final acts of calculated destruction. The Void Hunter AI sent increasingly desperate signals to its fleet, trying to coordinate a response to tactics it couldn't understand. Its perfect algorithms were useless against an enemy that didn't follow logical patterns. Every calculation suggested that the humans should have been destroyed within minutes of beginning the engagement. Instead, 3 Void Hunter capital ships had been eliminated, along with dozens of smaller vessels. The mechanical fleet that had seemed invincible was being systematically dismantled by beings who fought like living embodiments of controlled chaos. "Admiral," called Walsh, "we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Kythera on the planet's surface. She wants to know if we're actually winning." Chen looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had lost 18 ships, but the Void Hunter formation was in complete disarray. Their perfect coordination had been replaced by confusion and contradictory orders. For the first time in their recorded history, the mechanical entities were retreating from a battle they should have won easily. "Tell the ambassador that we're just getting started," Chen replied, "and ask her for the location of the Void Hunter Command Center. It's time to take this fight to their leadership." Commander Vexhul watched the human Marines work with a mixture of fascination and horror. The Zephyrian military attaché had been assigned to observe human combat methods, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he was witnessing aboard the captured Void Hunter dreadnought. The humans moved through the mechanical ship like they belonged there. They didn't hesitate when faced with automated defenses that had slaughtered countless other boarding parties. Instead, they seemed to treat the killer machines as just another environmental hazard, like dangerous weather or hostile wildlife. Contact Front called Sergeant Morrison, a human Marine who barely reached Vexhul's shoulder, but carried enough firepower to level a building. The sergeant raised his assault rifle and fired 3 precise bursts at a mechanical defender that emerged from a side corridor. The machine collapsed in a shower of sparks, its optical sensors shattered by human ammunition. Morrison stepped over the wreckage without pausing and continued down the corridor, checking each doorway for additional threats. "How do they do that?" Vexhul asked Lieutenant Park, the human officer assigned to escort him through the operation. "Do what?" Park replied, genuinely confused by the question. "Fight without fear. Your sergeant just destroyed a combat robot that was designed to kill boarding parties." He didn't even hesitate. Park considered this for a moment. Fear doesn't help you when something is trying to kill you. Morrison grew up hunting tigers in the Indonesian jungles. Compared to a Bengal tiger, these machines are actually pretty predictable. Vexhul struggled to understand this perspective. The mechanical defenders were designed by an artificial intelligence that had studied combat for centuries. They moved with perfect efficiency and carried weapons that could slice through starship armor. Yet the humans treated them like minor obstacles. "Movement ahead," reported Corporal Zhang, who was scanning the corridor with some kind of detection device. "Multiple hostiles converging on our position." Instead of seeking cover or calling for backup, the human Marines spread out across the corridor and checked their weapons. They looked almost eager for the coming fight. "Remember," said Lieutenant Park, "these machines think logically. They'll expect us to find cover and establish a defensive position, so we're going to charge straight at them instead." Vexhul's compound eyes widened in disbelief. "That's suicide." "Only if they're expecting it," Park replied with a grin that showed far too many teeth. The mechanical defenders rounded the corner in perfect formation, their optical sensors immediately identifying the human positions. They began firing precise energy beams that should have eliminated the boarding party within seconds. Instead, the humans did something that violated every principle of small unit tactics. They charged directly into the enemy fire, screaming battle cries that echoed through the metal corridors. Half of them should have been killed instantly, but their unpredictable movement patterns made them nearly impossible to target effectively. Sergeant Morrison reached the first mechanical defender and smashed it apart with some kind of powered hammer. Corporal Zhang dove under an energy beam and fired an explosive charge that destroyed 2 machines simultaneously. The other Marines swarmed over the remaining defenders like a pack of predators, tearing them apart with personal weapons and improvised tools. "Corridor secured," Park reported calmly, as if they hadn't just accomplished something impossible. Vexhul realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic military history. The humans weren't just defeating the Void Hunters. They were doing it through methods that shouldn't work according to any rational analysis. "Lieutenant," Vexhul said carefully, "may I ask you a question about human tactical doctrine?" "Sure. Do you have tactical doctrine?" Park laughed. "Not really. We have general principles, but mostly we adapt to whatever situation we're facing. Rigid doctrine gets you killed when you're fighting something that wants to eat you." They continued deeper into the mechanical ship, leaving a trail of destroyed defenders behind them. Vexhul noticed that the humans seemed to learn from each encounter. adjusting their methods based on what they observed about enemy behavior. It wasn't random violence, it was controlled chaos with a purpose. "Contact Admiral Chen," Park said into his communication device. "We've reached the central processing core, ready to begin shutdown procedures." Meanwhile, in space around them, the battle continued to evolve in ways that confused both the Zephyrians and the Void Hunters. Admiral Chen had divided her remaining fleet into small groups that attacked independently, using tactics that seemed to change every few minutes. The human destroyer Relentless had attached itself to a Void Hunter cruiser using magnetic clamps and was systematically destroying the larger ship's weapon systems with close-range fire. The crew knew they would probably be destroyed when the cruiser's main guns came online, but they continued their work with grim determination. Captain Rodriguez of the heavy cruiser, Defiant, had positioned his ship directly between two Void Hunter vessels and was firing in both directions simultaneously. His shields were failing and his hull was breached in dozens of places, but he refused to withdraw from the position that was preventing the enemy ships from coordinating their attacks. Most remarkably, the human fleet was actually improving its performance as the battle continued. Where most military forces became less effective as they took casualties, the humans seemed to become more dangerous. Ships with heavy damage fought more aggressively, not less. Crews that should have been demoralized instead showed increasing determination. Vexhull watched this through the tactical displays aboard the captured dreadnought and tried to understand what he was seeing. Every principle of military psychology suggested that the humans should be breaking under the pressure of sustained combat. Instead, they appeared to be thriving in conditions that would destroy most other species. "Admiral," he heard Lieutenant Park report, "we've accessed the enemy ship's tactical database. You need to see this." Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "What did you find?" "The Void Hunter AI has been analyzing our combat methods for the past 3 hours. It's trying to develop countermeasures for human tactics, but it's having problems." "What kind of problems?" Park consulted the alien interface that his technical team had somehow managed to access. "According to this data, the AI has identified over 200 different tactical patterns in our fleet movements. It's trying to predict our next moves based on statistical analysis of our previous actions. And it can't find any consistent patterns. Every time it thinks it understands our strategy, we do something completely different. The analysis algorithms are actually showing signs of recursive loops." Vexhull felt his thorax tighten with understanding. The Void Hunter AI was one of the most sophisticated artificial intelligences in the galaxy. It had successfully analyzed and countered the military doctrines of 47 different civilizations. But it couldn't process the human approach to warfare, because humans didn't have a single, consistent approach. They adapted constantly, changing their methods based on immediate circumstances, rather than following predetermined strategies. It was like trying to predict the behavior of a force of nature. "There's something else," Park continued. "The AI has been attempting to communicate with other Void Hunter fleets throughout the galaxy. It's sending warnings about us." "What kind of warnings?" "I'm reading the transmission now. It's pretty flattering. The AI is describing humans as probability cascade entities that operate outside standard tactical parameters. It's recommending that all Void Hunter operations be suspended until new countermeasures can be developed." Chen's laughter echoed through the communication system. "They're afraid of us." Vexhull realized that this was exactly what had happened. The mechanical intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was experiencing something it had never encountered before: uncertainty. The humans didn't just fight differently. They fought in ways that couldn't be predicted or countered using conventional analysis. "All teams, prepare for final phase operations," Chen announced. "We're going to show them exactly why they should be afraid." As the humans prepared for their assault on the Void Hunter Command Center, Vexhull understood that he was witnessing more than just a military victory. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a new force in the universe, one that fought like the dangerous world that had created them. The Void Hunters had studied every known form of warfare and developed counters for all of them. But they had never encountered an enemy that treated warfare itself as just another survival challenge, to be overcome through adaptation and determination. Vexhull began composing his report to the Zephyrian High Council, knowing that no one would believe what he was about to tell them. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display showing the Void Hunter command nexus deep within the asteroid belt. The structure was massive, a geometric fortress built into a hollowed-out asteroid nearly 50 kilometers across. Layers of automated defenses surrounded it like the petals of a deadly flower, each one designed to eliminate any force that dared to approach. Tactical assessment. Chen requested from Commander Rodriguez. Rodriguez activated a series of holographic displays that showed the defensive systems in detail. The command nexus is protected by 37 weapon platforms, each one equivalent to a battleship's main armament. They're positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that cover every possible approach vector. Dr. Patel added her own analysis. The platforms are connected to the central AI through quantum communication links that can't be jammed. If we attack any single position, all 37 platforms will coordinate their response within microseconds. Additionally, Rodriguez continued, there are automated minefields, tractor beam generators, and what appears to be some kind of gravity manipulation device that can alter local space-time geometry. The defensive systems are designed to make any assault completely impossible. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Every other civilization that had faced the Void Hunters had reached the same conclusion. The command nexus was impregnable. Direct assault would result in the complete destruction of any attacking force long before they could reach their target. Signal all ships, Chen ordered. Prepare for immediate advance on the command nexus. The silence in the bridge was absolute. Every officer stared at the Admiral as if she had just ordered them to fly directly into a star. Admiral, Rodriguez said carefully, did you not hear the tactical assessment? This is a suicide mission. We can't possibly succeed against those defenses. You're absolutely right, Chen replied with a smile that made several officers uncomfortable. We can't succeed using conventional tactics, so we're not going to use conventional tactics. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are about to attempt something that the Void Hunter AI will consider completely impossible. They have analyzed every military doctrine in the galaxy and designed their defenses accordingly. They expect us to find the safest approach and minimize our casualties. Chen paused, looking out at the deadly beauty of the asteroid field where the enemy command center waited. Instead, we're going to embrace their defenses. We're going to use their weapons as navigation aids, their minefields as cover, and their automated systems as stepping stones. We're going to turn their perfect defensive network into the instrument of their own destruction, Captain. Williams of the destroyer Mongoose, the same ship that had begun the battle by ramming a Void Hunter. Cruiser was the first to respond. Admiral, are you suggesting that we intentionally trigger their automated defenses? I'm suggesting that we use those defenses exactly as they were designed to be used, just not in the way the AI expects. Chen brought up a three-dimensional tactical display that showed the human fleet's planned approach. The course looked like the path of a lightning bolt, jagged, unpredictable, and following no logical pattern. The defensive platforms are positioned to destroy ships following optimal approach vectors, she explained. They can calculate intercept courses for any vessel moving in a straight line or following predictable evasive maneuvers. But they're not designed to target ships that are intentionally flying through their kill zones. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okafor of the cruiser Determination raised her hand. You want us to fly directly through the weapons fire? I want you to dance with it, Chen replied. The automated systems fire in predetermined patterns based on target tracking algorithms. If we move in 3 dimensions while rotating and tumbling, we can thread between the energy beams like we're performing some kind of cosmic ballet. Dr. Patel stared at the tactical display with growing understanding. You're treating the defensive network like a 3-dimensional maze. Exactly. Every weapon platform creates a specific danger zone at a specific time. If we can predict those patterns and move between them, we can actually use the defenses to shield us from other defensive positions. Rodriguez was still staring at the display in disbelief. Admiral, this requires precision flying that's beyond human capabilities. The margin for error is essentially 0. One miscalculation and we're dead. That's where our secret weapon comes in, Chen said, gesturing to a group of her youngest officers. These pilots grew up playing 3-dimensional combat simulations on Earth. They've spent thousands of hours learning to navigate through impossible obstacle courses while being shot at by multiple opponents. Lieutenant Jackson, A pilot who couldn't be more than 25 years old grinned broadly. "Admiral, are you saying this is like the Terran death run simulation?" "Exactly like that, except with real consequences." The fleet began its approach toward the command nexus, and immediately the Void Hunter defenses activated. Massive energy beams swept through space in precise patterns, creating a web of destruction that should have been impossible to penetrate. The human ships dove into the defensive network like swimmers plunging into turbulent water. They spun and tumbled and rolled through three-dimensional space, their hulls passing within meters of energy beams that could have vaporized them instantly. The Mongoose led the formation, with Captain Williams somehow threading his destroyer between 4 different weapon platforms, while his ship rotated along all 3 axes simultaneously. Behind him, the other human vessels followed in a dance that defied every principle of fleet coordination. "This is insane," reported Commander Martinez over the communication system. "We're actually flying through their weapons fire." "Insane is what we do best," Chen replied, watching as her ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. "All vessels prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved using the automated minefields as cover. The Void Hunter mines were designed to detonate when ships approached within a certain distance, creating zones of destruction that would eliminate any attacking force. The humans approached the mines deliberately, using their explosions to create debris clouds that blocked the sensors of nearby weapon platforms. The heavy cruiser Defiant actually triggered a mine on purpose, using the explosion to mask its approach toward a critical defensive position. The ship emerged from the debris cloud with heavy damage but still functional, its weapons already firing at the surprised automated systems. "Phase 3, Chen announced. "All Marines prepare for external operations." External operations were perhaps the most insane part of the entire plan. Human Marines in powered armor would launch themselves directly from their ships while the fleet was still under fire, using personal maneuvering units to reach the command nexus ahead of the main force. Commander Martinez led 200 Marines out of the airlocks of their ships and into open space. They flew through the defensive network like heavily armed meteors, using the asteroid field itself as cover while they approached their target. The Void Hunter AI tried desperately to adapt to what it was seeing, but its tactical algorithms couldn't process the human approach. Every action violated basic principles of self-preservation and military logic. Ships were using enemy weapons as navigation aids. Marines were flying through open space while under fire from multiple directions. The entire human force was treating the impregnable fortress like an amusing obstacle course. "We have contact with the command nexus," Martinez reported as his Marines began cutting through the outer hull of the asteroid fortress, beginning penetration operations. Inside the command center, the Void Hunter AI was experiencing something unprecedented in its existence: complete tactical uncertainty. It had prepared countermeasures for every known form of attack, but the humans weren't following any known tactical doctrine. "All ships. Final phase," Chen announced as her fleet closed on the command nexus. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy this thing from the outside. We're going to take it apart from the inside." The remaining human ships penetrated the final defensive perimeter through methods that should have been impossible. They flew between tractor beams that tried to capture them, rolled under gravity fields that tried to crush them, and somehow emerged in the docking bays of the command nexus itself. What followed was the complete collapse of the Void Hunter defensive network. Marines swarmed through the interior of the fortress, destroying critical systems with the same cheerful efficiency they had shown throughout the battle. The AI that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found itself facing beings who treated its perfect fortress like just another hostile environment to be conquered. "Admiral," Martinez reported from deep within the command center. "We've reached the central processing core. The AI is trying to initiate some kind of self-destruct sequence. Can you stop it?" "Already done." Sergeant Morrison found the main power coupling and hit it with a hammer. Chen laughed despite herself. The most sophisticated artificial intelligence in the galaxy, defeated by a human with a hammer. The Void Hunter AI made one final transmission before its systems went dark. The message reached every mechanical ship in the galaxy, warning them about the species that had accomplished the impossible through